Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. I'm Eric Kane alongside Grant Ramey, Brent Hubbs, and Austin Price with the Christmas tree. Recording this on November the 1st. Too early or just about the right time?
It's never too early. Listen, all you need to know is Rodney Garner never takes his tree down.
I was going to say, if it's never too early, why do you ever take it down?
Yeah. Well, my wife takes them down when we're normally at a bowl site, which is good.
But why do you allow her to take them down if it's never too early?
I don't know. I haven't really thought past that, Hubbs.
Because it is too early, right? That's exactly why.
No,
I'm on AP side. It's not too early. It's officially once Halloween's over with, you get your candy and you start playing the Christmas music November the 1st.
These made up rules that are, it's like don't wear white after Labor Day. Yet I see people wear white every year after Labor Day.
It's not a rule. It's just don't disrespect Thanksgiving. Let's give Thanksgiving a moment.
Here's my thing: Are we going to listen to Christmas tunes on July 5th because the July 4th holiday is over?
Sometimes I do, Robert, to get in the season.
Are you rocking your Pentatonics Christmas album, Eric Kane, on July the 5th? Is that what you're doing?
Maybe.
That's terrible.
I'm all for it year round. You know, all that stuff in Gatlinburg when they have the Christmas shops that stay open year round. I'm for it. I love it.
One year on July 4th, HBO had a Home Alone marathon. We turned it on. It was the weirdest experience of my life.
Hey, Hubbard, Die Hard, is it a Christmas movie?
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie. Sure. 100%.
It's a Christmas movie.
I love when that gets brought up.
Gets brought up every single year. All right. Well, we're going to bring up now some of your questions because...
Hey, Hubbard, is Ty Sampson coming back to Tennessee? There's a post.
I'm going to say no.
Well, I would say no too, but I just love the post. I love the posts that break down where he's going to go. Those are my favorite. Like, if he leaves, he's going here.
That question and many more here today on the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, presented as always by our friends Exterior Home Solutions. If you need roofing, siding, windows, or a garage, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. They've been local. They've been trusted since 1999. That number for a free estimate is 865-524-5888. You can always visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. All right, let's jump into it. We will start with Smoky Man 15. What are the chances we see Deno Slaughter back in orange next fall? Brent, he is a senior, but obviously has a COVID year if he wants to use it. What are the chances we see Deno Slaughter back here?
I hadn't really considered it. I just kind of assumed he would be a guy that wouldn't be back, Austin. But I mean, the foot injury has certainly hurt him this year. I guess anything is possible, but my initial thought would be that he's a guy that's moving on, AP.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would tell you if he's back, they should transition him to safety. One, they're thinner there. Two, I think that's more his natural position. He's been the team player and played corner the last, year and a handful of games. But I don't know at this point. I would tell you he's probably back. I mean, where's he going to go? I don't think he can go to the league at this point. And I just don't see him leaving unless he feels like I'm not going to play. The problem is again, Tennessee is going to have to make some decisions on some guys because they have younger players that they need to start pushing or they're going to lose them, right? Like that's inevitable in today's college football. You can't put somebody over there on the pine for 2+ years and it'd be okay. Like that's just not going to happen. So you've got some younger guys who are going to be pushing and they need them to be pushing. They need them to play. So that's why I think safety, if he's coming back, makes the most sense because who are the safeties next year? Like I don't think a locked in spot there. Whereas you could say, okay, there's a handful of guys who could be your corner.
Yeah, but who's your star? I mean, there's a possibility he could be the star position guy too, right?
100%. That's right.
Yeah, he and Jordan Thomas have some versatility back there, but you're right. There's a lot of defensive back turnover potentially. And I'm with UAP. It's kind of like, I mean, unless you just don't want to play football anymore. And I mean, some people do after 4 years. That's fine. It's kind of like, where are you going to go unless you want to transfer somewhere and go play? But I don't think that's the case.
Well, I mean, like how many times have you seen the last handful of years, especially since the transfer portal became a thing, a kid leave a school and just grass wasn't greener. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think there's enough evidence out there to say, okay, I probably should stay. And that's not just a Tennessee. That's a lot of places.
Let's move on here to, we'll go and get a couple here from Athrun. Number one, why has it seemed like the defensive back rotation is the only position on defense where they are not force-feeding young players? Granted, it just feels like Tim Banks and Willie Martinez have their veterans that they trust. They have put Ricky Gibson in at times, but not an awful lot. But yeah, it's been pretty much a veteran group.
That's the question I can't answer. That's like, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? Why is AP got a Christmas tree up behind him on the podcast in November?
We've already answered
that's
that.
just,
Sorry.
That's just the way it is. Like, it's never too early for a Christmas tree. It's never too late to not have your starters in at safety on the 78th snap of the game because they've played all 78. I don't know why they don't rotate more there. They lean on those guys they trust, I guess, the veterans. I don't know what it is about that position or those coaches specifically. Hubs, maybe you know better than I do why they lean on those guys. That I guess they know what they're getting from at least, and there's some known there.
I mean, look, Tim Banks has made it very clear from the first week of the season, preseason, whatever the case may be. Eric Kane, I'm gonna ignore him, by the way.
I was gonna say, how long can we let this go? AP doing whatever he's doing.
Austin the whole time.
CBS.
So
back at 24/7 because of the Christmas tree comment. Okay, yeah.
the point being. The point being, Tim Banks has made it clear he's going to go with the guy he trusts, the veteran, guys who are going to be in the right spot, guys that they know they're supposed to be where they're going to be where they're supposed to be. He's said that publicly multiple times. So they're not going to force a young guy in there. That's just not going to be the case. If this game goes the way everybody thinks it should go and everybody hopes that it should go, I would bet the last two starters off the field are the safeties for Tennessee on Saturday.
If this year wasn't the year that you saw, no, I mean, I agree with you.
I couldn't agree more, Hubbard.
Yeah,
and I do agree with Grant. I'm not saying you got to go and play him a ton, but BJ does a nice job of sprinkling in some guys. I mean, just like Saturday. I mean, at Kentucky. I mean, T. Lander played 2 or 3 plays. Arion Carter played 7 plays. It's not a ton, but it's enough to, keep them engaged, right? For my liking, I think you've got to find a way to keep some of those younger guys engaged. Even a guy like Jordan Thomas, who's in his second year, like at A&M, he almost came in and forced a safety. He's not playing a ton of snaps, but he's playing just enough to keep him engaged. And I think that stuff matters. For coaches that don't think that, I think that they're missing the boat.
Well, keep in mind, too, Andre Turrentine played safety the entire fall camp. He's with the ones. And he hasn't really had a role in this team. And so, I mean, I think that just goes to show you that, these coaches, they trust and they know what they have in these veterans, just like Trayvon Flowers last year. I mean, they know what they have in these veterans. They trust these veterans, and they're going to play these veterans. Because if a guy like Andre Turrentine, who rep with the ones the entire fall camp, can't crack a rotational spot, then I think that just kind of says a lot. A couple more here from Athlon. AP will stay with you. Any new high school names coming out with more film out as the season goes on?
Not really. The high school board is kind of the high school board at this point. I mean, it's Cam Michael, it's Jordan Seaton. Tennessee's still trying on a guy like Michael Smith, the tight end that plays for Jake Merklinger. They're tying with Max LeBlanc. They're still going to, they're going to see Daniel Hill, later today. Jerry Mack, tonight will be down in Mississippi to watch, Daniel Hill play. But I mean, as far as guys that have come out of left field, not really. There's no Arion Carter this year that, kind of went from, a mid-level to boom, all of a sudden he's got 75 Power 5 offers.
Or a James Pierce. I mean, not the same situation, but James Pierce was a late bloomer as well, cycle before. Latest on Jordan Seaton, you mentioned him. Anything new with him?
No, I mean, he's going to take a ton of visits. He's at Colorado this weekend. Then he comes to Tennessee in 2 weeks. He's going to Ohio State. Probably will take a visit back to Oregon. We'll take a visit, potentially to Oklahoma. A lot of visits between now and December. This thing's going to have 40,000 twists and turns. And we've talked about that in the war room for weeks. I know I said I would take Tennessee over the field last week, and I still feel like Tennessee's in a really good spot. Nothing's changed there for me, but it's still a total coin flip, right? I mean, this is one thing that, one visit could make or break it, right? He comes here, has it blown away, Georgia atmosphere, blah, 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 boom, or he comes here, Tennessee gets beat by 25, and then he's like, no, I don't really like it, or he goes to Oregon, blown away by atmosphere. this thing is going to shift on a dime. And so it's kind of like, it's one of those games where you just want to have the ball last, so to speak. And I don't mean that by the last visit. I just mean like the momentum at the end.
And then lastly here, Huber, what position do you think Tennessee's going to hit the hardest in the portal? We talk about this a lot. I mean, tight end for sure. You'll take an offensive lineman. You'll probably take you're always open to take a defensive lineman, especially if some of those guys don't return. I think you like a receiver. You need to say. I mean, there are a number. You got to have a kicker potentially. I mean, there are a number of areas, but I think the conversation is tight end for sure and offensive line.
Yeah, and I think the question, Grant's going to be, what's their numbers going to look like? I mean, how many spots are they going to have available for transfers in January? When you talk about, obviously they're self-imposing, so they're going to be below the 85. Not far, but they're going to be a bit under the 85, which means if you're going to go heavy defense or heavy offensive line, heavy tight end, heavy bodies in January with newcomers, then you're going to need some departures probably on your roster as well. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see what the end of November and the 1st of December looks like from the standpoint of who's staying, who's not staying, and what does that do for your numbers for transfers throughout the month of December and early January.
Remember when it was a simpler time and it was just how many guys can Tennessee recruit and take in this class? And that was it. There was no how many guys are going to get out of the portal versus how many guys are leaving. Which of these guys are coming back and using a COVID year? Like, I don't know. Those are the good old days when it was just one number.
See, I kind of like it because, like, here's the thing. Huber and I grew up in a day where, like, February signing day, man, that was like Christmas. It was fantastic. All the January official visits and all the momentum swings. And then they moved it up to December, and, like, it's kind of anticlimactic. So I like that it adds a little suspense, because, I mean, like the old days, that thing was fantastic. I don't know if it ever gets that way again where you're looking at fax machines, but at the same time, like, I think that it adds a little intrigue in what is really a kind of a mundane process because everybody commits in June or July outside of a handful, and they most of the time just stick with the school they committed to, and they sign in December.
Yeah, the only thing with the old school January days was you knew who you were chasing and who you were tracking. Now I mean, nobody knew who McCollin Castles was, until AP you dropped, hey, he's coming to Tennessee. Like
until I called Paul Shelton.
Like that, there was no kind of follow that recruitment. There's some drama there. It's like, hey, they got a guy today,
and nobody knew Keenan Peely either.
That's right. Hey, they got a guy today. Hey, we got a guy today. I mean,
I love those though. I love when the GQ and nobody else knows, but we know. It's more fun that way. Like, I mean, it's more fun because it comes out of left field. I mean, everything else is tracked. So, like, when a kid's coming on a visit, it's it becomes anticlimactic by the time because you either know he's coming or he's not coming.
There's not near the drama. That's for sure. But it is going to be fascinating to see, to answer his question, just what the numbers look like. I think that's the biggest thing. They obviously have to have a tight end. They obviously, I think, need multiple offensive linemen in this class. Then you could say they could use one of these, they could use one of those, they can use one of that type of thing. But the question is going to be how many spots do they realistically have to bring in a bunch of new guys in the transfer portal in January? Because look, the May transfer portal window is right. I mean, it's not. I mean, that's not the greatest. That's not the greatest selection of talent to choose from in May generally. So you got to have numbers to play with in January, and what do those numbers look like?
Grant, let's go to you for this one. This is Heupel's hype man. Do you think from here on out you're going to see Sampson used more in the passing game? Like, even though he's a running back, he could be a huge asset in that slot position. He's willing to help the team any way possible. We saw a couple of times, Grant, where Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson lined up in the slot. It wasn't 10, 15 plays, but kind of some specialty plays. But more than anything, I mean, yeah, they've been throwing to the running backs out of the backfield, really all year long. And Sampson in that fourth quarter was huge on that 3rd and 10. If I'm Tennessee, I'd continue to look that way.
Yeah, I had enough evidence before Kentucky to get Dylan Sampson more involved any way possible. Get that guy in space. I mean, he can go between the tackles too. That little shovel pass he had where he bounced off some guys on that big 3rd down at Kentucky. I think that was a 3rd down, 3rd and long to extend that drive. Everything he did in the fourth quarter, I had enough evidence before Lexington to get him more involved. Certainly after what he did in crunch time for that 4-minute drive to close out the game and what he did in the fourth quarter. Yeah, get the ball in his hands as much as possible, in my opinion.
Grant wrong-handed asked Rob last week what he thought about where Tennessee's offensive efficiency ranking would be per Ken Palm. He's coming back this week and saying how we feeling about a top 15 National League basketball offense this week. Obviously, the explosion at Sunday at Michigan State, and of course the big win, exhibition win yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about top 15. If they're around 30, I think that's pretty good because you're probably going to be top 10 on the defensive end. Scoring 89 at Michigan State is obviously extremely impressive, but at the same time, last October we watched them score 99 against Gonzaga in a G League gym in Frisco, Texas, and Tyreek Key went off, and that wasn't the team that they turned out to be. So if they could just be around the 30s, I think that would be a step up after being probably around the 60s last year.
All right, AP Vol_Nation3. What's the likelihood on, you already mentioned Jordan Seaton, but Cam Michael, Kai Bates being Tennessee Volunteers?
Cam Michael, that one, a lot of mystery around that. Like, I mean, Georgia's still swinging there hard, and history tells you that a South Georgia kid that Georgia comes in on late, it's going to get a little dicey. Now, the one you got to watch for is Colorado because his cousin's committed there. I think that that's a real thing, but I wouldn't, really count Tennessee out just yet. Like, I think that a lot of people around Cam Michael like, Kelsey Pope and Tennessee. Again, I think this one's very much up in the air, as we said here in early November. As for Kai Bates, he's going to be in town for the Georgia game. I spoke with him just last night and, had a good conversation. He's very comfortable with Tennessee's staff. He's been talking to a lot of the recruits. He's been talking to some players on the team that he knows, like a John Campbell, who's from the same type area. And, I think that one's one very much to watch. Now, doesn't mean it's some lock to Tennessee, but I think if he makes it here for the Georgia game, then I think that's something you have to watch out for. Like that becomes really real if he hits campus. Again, other schools, including LSU, are going to try to keep him from coming here. They know that he really likes Tennessee in a lot of ways. But I think that's one you have to watch. If he makes it to campus, then, big eyes.
Volunteer for life. Hubbard says it's been said that you need to hit the portal for wide receivers next year. If I'm remembering correctly, we had some pretty good wide receiver prospects in the last two classes. How is their development coming along? And do you think that they're going to be ready to step up next year? Essentially, Jazz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, who are playing a little bit right now, Nathan Leacock, is a freshman this year that hadn't seen the field at all, but some of those younger wide receivers, are they going to be looking in the portal or relying on the development of some of those younger receivers? And then maybe Dante Thornton as well. And, of course, Squirrel White's going to be back.
Well, I think from a receiver standpoint, it would be a luxury if you do something. I mean, if you're going to take a portal receiver, I think it's got to be a dude. Okay. I mean, I don't think it's just a warm body. I know that they like more bodies there, but I think you got to have a dude if you're going to go get somebody. We don't know exactly what Brew McCoy's situation is going to be.
It'll be pivotal.
I don't know that you'll know Brew McCoy's situation for a bit here. You know what I'm saying? I don't. That's a hard thing. Do you go to Brew McCoy in December and go, hey, I got to know right now, are you coming back or not? Or do you say, hey, man, you got a spot whenever you make your decision, whatever, that type thing. So I don't think you go get a guy unless you go get a legitimate, big-time, proven guy who's looking to play somewhere that they don't have a quarterback, right? I mean, you look around at somebody who's got a quarterback who's a senior that's being pretty productive, and those guys are unsure if the next guy behind them is going to be able to get them the ball. Then maybe you start looking at those guys. I think Caleb Webb's got to find another gear here in the back half of this season. Chaz Nimrod seems to have kind of run away from him in terms of being in the rotation at that point. I don't know. I'm not seeing Nathan Leacock, catch a ball since August, and he looked like he had a long ways to go when I saw him play. So I think this is a pivotal offseason for Nathan Leacock in terms of grasping this offense, catching the ball better, some of those things.
We got plenty more questions to get into as the Volquest Mailbag podcast rolls on, but I do want to tell you about our friends over at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and truly give you, what is it, AP?
That Lululemon look?
Indeed, but it's better than Lululemon because what they do is it fits way better than regular shorts. Stiff, restricting cotton. They fixed that issue, this being Bird Dogs, with a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but it stretches to give you a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Bird Dogs, khaki shorts, your slacks. Their versatility is the name of the game. And again, they don't sacrifice movement. You feel good doing them. You can wear them to church, to work, to a business meeting, out on a date with the wife. Whatever the case may be, the versatility is the name of the game with Bird Dogs. And you can get a pair right now by going to birddogs.com/ use the promo code VQ. That's promo code VQ for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/ VQ. Promo code VQ for Volquest. VQ for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that. And as always, a big thank you to our proud sponsors, Exterior Home Solutions.
You know, life happens, and damage to your home can be extremely stressful. That's why it's important to find someone who offers efficient, quality work with financing options. Exterior Home Solutions, they value not only family, but community. And they're who I call when life happens, and you should too.
Give Exterior Home Solutions a call today if you have a need, 865-524-5888, or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. We'll get back into the mailbag questions. Let's go to Bearval. Austin Price, this looks like a question for you. Chances of Cooper, John Campbell, Javonte Spraggins returning next season.
And I would also throw Gerald Mincey in there. I mean, all four could return. All four could also be gone, which means you'd have to replace everybody. And I think that'll be a big telltale sign on kind of where this team is a year from now. I'm not saying you can't go to the portal and get guys, but I think it's unrealistic to think you will go bring in four bona fide guys to be, to replace everybody. So I think you need a couple of people to return. Cooper, coin flip. Spraggins, I would say he's thinking he's going pro. We'll see what kind of grade he gets. John Campbell, same thing. Gerald Mincey, same thing. Again, I think a lot of it will depend on the grades. The grades the D linemen get, the grades the O linemen get, the grades that Jalen Wright gets. I think all that will tell the tale, so to speak, of who's back potentially and who's not.
Reset the conversation again, as we do every week on the defensive front. You've done it again, but do it again. Those guys, Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, some of those guys that have a year, but could leave or come back. Big
O is going to get his grade back, and we'll see where it's at. I don't think he's in a rush to leave, but I think he'll get his grade back, and if it's high enough, then he'll probably look to go. Bryson Eason, I would say he's back. Again, he'll get his grade, but I would say that he is definitely back. Elijah Simmons, same thing. Omar Norman Lott will get his grade back. I would probably say that's probably lean going, but I don't think it's a slam dunk. Like, I think that, he's very comfortable here. He's very happy here. I would probably put the most money on Tyler Barron playing his last game in Orange coming up in a few weeks. I would say that Tyler Barron will be off to the NFL.
Hubs, who are the starting linebackers next year? Herring, Carter, or T-Lander? Of course, all those guys are going to play if they're here, but the two starters I would imagine would be Elijah Herring and whichever one of Arian Carter or Jeremiah T-Lander performs well in camp.
I would say it would be Carter and Elijah Herring, but again, as you said, it doesn't matter because of the way they rotate Grant. I mean, I think the guy who does the best job of that is Brian Jean-Marie. I know Rodney Garner plays a lot of guys. I think that's easier for him to do right now because he's got, 12 veterans who have played a bunch of snaps, but for Brian Jean-Marie to force kind of those young freshmen out onto the field, I think is a credit to him. And I think Tennessee benefits from it. There's no question that T-Lander and Arian Carter are going to be better football players next fall. Not because of spring practice, but because of what they have experienced this fall on the football field on Saturdays.
100%. The Keenan Peely injury happening in week one, his situation, everything that had been said about him through the offseason and fall camp. I mean, that was awful. But if there is a plus side of it, who is it Heupel? I can't remember, says there's no substitution for live reps this time of year. I can't keep up with which coach is leaning on which saying, but I mean, there's no substitution for live reps. You're going to be so much better moving forward with Elijah Herring, Arian Carter, with Jeremiah Thielander because of the reps they're getting right now. Even if some of them are limited reps, I mean, Elijah Herring's doing a ton. Thielander's not doing as much. Carter's not doing as much, it feels like, lately, but they're getting these live reps, and they're going to be a lot better for it next year.
Hey, Grant, as long as you're out there on the grass, man, getting some reps, it's noteworthy, right?
It is.
As we sit here on November 2nd, I'm going to take Arian Carter and Keenan Peely. Tennessee starting linebackers.
So
for next fall
on November the 2nd, that would mean AP.
The more I've talked to people, I think that Peely is ahead of pace as far as rehabilitation, but much like Cooper was cleared technically, but not really, wasn't ready to play. And I think that's where we may see that with this Peely deal is, can he physically do it? There's a difference between being cleared to come back and physically being able to do something that you've not done in 10 weeks. I think that that's going to be an interesting sign. I'm not saying that he's definitely not going to play this year. I'm telling you that that's something, the more I've talked to people, I think that that's a legitimate concern. And if he can't physically go, what does he do? And I think at that point, it leans to potentially being back as the veteran in that room.
If he can win an appeal.
If he can win an appeal, as we said here on November 2nd.
And then lastly here from Bear Vol, who is kicking field goals for the Vols next year? Last two kickers have come via the transfer portal. Does Tennessee follow suit in that regard, or a young guy on the roster, Brent Hubbs?
I think they will be open to seeing what's in the portal. I think JT Carver is a guy who has continued to get better. He was bothered by an injury in fall camp that set him back in the kickoff race. Josh Tuberville's done a terrific job kicking the ball off. But I mean, I think there's some comfort level with JT Carver where he's at right now as a kicker and his growth. I think the question is, when you prioritize what do you need in the portal versus the numbers that you have, that's an interesting decision. That's why roster management is not just a catchphrase in college athletics. It is the biggest thing in college athletics. Those who manage their roster the best are going to win. And it's not just about going out and recruiting guys. It's about transfer portal guys. Who do you keep? Who do you encourage to leave, to create room? All of that are conversations that are very different for coaches to have now than they were having 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and JT Carver, remember, is a James Wilhoit guy. He is taught by James Wilhoit, same person that teaches Charles Campbell. So, I mean, I think that continuity. And Hubbs is right. Like, Carver's been in the program. If you feel good about it, then you don't have to go to the portal. That's one less spot you got to worry about going forward. I think that's the best case scenario for Tennessee, in my opinion, because they are going to be having to trim off some fat at the end of the year.
On a sidebar, but still on the topic of kickers, I love how Charles Campbell earlier this week with the media was talking about how he's always getting work, with the snapper in his holder and everything. And he's like, yeah, I've always got Matthew Salensi over here snapping to me, and I always got to go find Jackson Ross. He's running routes with the receivers or throwing with the quarterbacks. Just drop that in and then moved on. It's just like the dude just wants to be out there having fun and thinking that he's the best athlete. I love that. Before he leaves Tennessee, whenever that is, I think you're going to see some type of fake punt. Are you guys, sidebar, also, are you surprised you haven't seen it yet, whether he just takes off or he throws the football? Or because, I mean, obviously when you do that rugby style, that presents opportunities to do some things.
Well, they have stuff in.
Well, of course they have stuff in. Are you surprised that you haven't seen it?
No, not necessarily, because
Okay.
That's not really Heupel's nature. Ultimately, I know that Eckler is the special teams coordinator, but that's a Heupel call.
Well, of course.
And I mean, like, when's the last time you saw Josh Heupel run a trick play? Like, that's just not what he does, right? Like, I think if there's going to be
he ran one against UT Martin because, well, he wanted to run one against UT Martin.
It's beautiful too.
I need to see a Les Miles place kick, the holder, flip it over his head to 5'0" Charles Campbell going around the right side. That's what I need to see.
All right, let's move on. Let's go to iHeart Vols. Grant, let's see here. Considering how paper thin Tennessee is on the offensive line, would you consider giving Campbell and Mincy Saturday off if you were Heupel? To answer the question, I 100% would consider giving them the day off. Will it happen? No, I do not think it'll happen. What do you say, Grant?
I I mean, in a perfect world, you can do a lot of things on Saturday, but in an imperfect world, you're tied 6-6 with Austin P in the second quarter with 5 minutes left before halftime. I mean, yeah, it would be great. This would be a great opportunity to get as many young guys as you can play, get guys healthy that have been going for weeks at a time here. But you got to start the football game fast. And you got to put this team away fast. And the last time we saw Tennessee as a 35, whatever it is, plus point favorite, they didn't play too well. So I think it just depends on how much you can take care of business in the first half. If you can get away with going without some of your starters before you even kind of consider that. I don't know. How do you look at that, Hubs?
Oh, I think that you absolutely. I mean, you're not going to tell them to stay in their windsuits on the sidelines. You better dress them out and tape them up, and get it out there and end the football game. Now, you know where I stand on the second half deal. We don't need to trot a guy back out there to start the second half if you're up 4 touchdowns. The same way 2 years ago, Hendon Hooker didn't need to be running quarterback zone read at Missouri up 4 touchdowns. But you got to go win the football game first. I mean, it's what you've got to do. And look, UConn's not very good. They're 1-7. They have played in a bunch of games where it's been one possession games. So I guess Jim Moore Jr. could throw out the whole we're 6 plays away from being bowl eligible or 8 plays away, whatever coaches are saying these days. But Tennessee's got to be mature and go get business done so that you can get to all the things that everybody wants to see on Saturday. All the things you thought you were going to see against Austin P, but you didn't when you started 1 for 7 or 1 for 9 for 11 yards throwing the football and, floundered around for a quarter and a half before you decided to kind of get going a little bit. You never really got going in that game at all.
And then at Kentucky, you had Joe Milton started like 6 for 6, but for like 28 yards in that first quarter, just completely different. Aaron Beasley, seems like he's not been the same of late. Is he dealing with an injury because he was playing at an elite level to begin the season? Austin Price.
I don't think he's injured. No.
He's had a little bit of a back, but I don't think it's anything that's bothered him. I think the biggest difference for Aaron Beasley and why you're not seeing all those things, they're not blitzing him as much because James Pierce is pretty good, Tyler Barron's pretty good, and they're not bringing a bunch of extra people, and those guys are doing a good job against the run. I mean, I think a year ago Beasley was making a bunch of plays because it was run blitzes and they were blitzing him on the quarterback, and they played a different brand of football because of what that defensive front's been able to do. It's probably limited some of his splash plays or big plays at the linebacker position.
All right, Austin's putter has like 4 questions here. I probably won't get to all of them.
I've seen Austin's putter.
It was trash. It was trash last Friday. It was trash. My putter was trash.
Not as trash as my driver was, but we'll continue on with the podcast.
What about Craig Price though? Was his trash?
My dad needs to join and be Craig's two-way chipper. Like that's his thing. He pulls that thing out. I get so mad. I'm like, stop pulling it out just to pull it out.
I just wonder where he bought the two-way chipper at. Is what.
Buddy, it was at like Kmart, okay? Like
exactly right. It was at the Kmart.
Austin's like the nerve of going to Kmart. I mean, who are you?
You have no faith in your game if you think you're going to hit it up the side of a tree and have to use a two-way chipper.
All right, over under 1.25 quarters for Nico on Saturday. Anybody?
Over.
You better hope it's
over.
I'll say over.
I'll say 1.25. So I guess I'll take the over.
Okay. Let's see here. How concerned should Tennessee be about the secondary moving forward? Felt like no hadn't really hurt, and Tennessee will need to tighten up to even beat Missouri. Missouri can sling it around, Brent. Secondary play's got to play better, obviously, at Missouri than it did at Kentucky. Hadden, of course, your best cover corner. He wasn't out there, but I mean that whole group back there didn't have a good day.
No, for me, Grant, it was about the middle of the field more than it was the stuff on the sidelines. And I know Leary was really good delivering the ball on the sideline, but for me, I mean, I think they gave up nearly 200 yards over the middle of the field, and that's my biggest concern about this secondary going into Missouri and Georgia is just can they defend the middle of the field, because that looked like a little bit like what we saw out of Tennessee secondary the last couple of years in terms of the middle of the field.
I mean, it's going to be a struggle when you lose somebody like Kamal Hadden, who's playing the way Kamal Hadden had been the last few weeks. And what did Tim Banks say Tuesday? They were so focused on stopping Ray Davis in the Kentucky run game that they were almost willing. It sounded like he was saying they're willing to give up whatever they were going to give up in the pass game. I don't know if they thought about literally throwing for 372 on them. But I'm interested to see how they. I mean, UConn, what you look like on Saturday, then what you look like at Missouri. If they go back on the road and they struggle again, if it is something more than just they were trying to focus on stopping the run game and give up what they gave up against Kentucky through the air.
And AP, they better get home with a pass rush if they're gonna be better in the secondary, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like that's the biggest reason I think you saw. It wasn't the loss of Kamal Hadden; it was the lack of a pass rush. I mean, yeah, Kamal Hadden would have helped, and then he was playing at his best football of his career. But it was playing zone, the lack of a pass rush, and when the quarterback's got all day and the DBs are playing zone, I mean, you're going to be able to boom, boom, 12, 14, 12, 3rd and 8, boom, So, getting home, and maybe that's where you see the reemergence of Aaron Beasley, because if they're going to, go max protect, that means Tennessee is going to have to blitz, which means dial up number 6.
Last question. Let's go to Reltney for live. 2 guys who got injured in preseason, Tyree Weathersby and Deshaun Bishop. How is the recovery going? Has either returned to practice? AP, correct me if I'm wrong, Weathersby was out for the year. Bishop, there was a chance of him returning later in the year, at least to practice. Has that happened yet?
No. Now, Weathersby will be back for spring. It was a hip deal. He's back walking. He's off the scooter. And Deshaun Bishop is back walking as well off of his ankle deal. So, again, we'll see if Bishop's here, in the spring. When you look, when he sees kind of how the season's, played out, does he want to continue to sit behind a loaded backfield, or does he want to go play somewhere? I think that's that way with any kid that's in his position. So we'll kind of see where he is, over the next month or so, when that transfer portal window. And I'm not saying he's leaving. I'm just saying, like, when he's watched the fall and you've got a bunch of young guys in front of him, does he feel like I can get past them, or does he say, I want to go play? And I think that you have to weigh that with several kids on all rosters across college football.
And then lastly, Grant, how surprising is the production of Gainey and Connect versus Michigan State and Little Ron?
This is what we heard about Dalton Connect all summer, that he's a legit scorer, and he's a guy that can play in the NBA. He has that type of skill set. He's got that type of size. To see it happen in his debut in East Lansing in front of a near-capacity crowd at Michigan State, to score at the volume he did, is pretty surprising. Very surprising to see Jordan Gainey go 5-5 to start the game, 4-4, whatever it was. He had 14 quick points when Tennessee got out to that fast start. That's who Dalton Connect's got to be for this team. And I think Jordan Gainey has to be some version of that for this team. I mean, he's one of the best three-point shooters in the country, but he played at USC Upstate, where he was the focus point of every team they played. And now he's on a team with a lot more talent around him, and maybe he can find his shots. But I was impressed with how he handled the ball, ran point guard without Santi, without Zakai. But apparently that's who Dalton is and who he can be. I'm very interested to see just how productive he is all the way through the season, how high those numbers can climb.
Hey, Grant, one fun basketball question for me, and I know we got to get out the door here, but was Zakiya Ziegler sitting next to Rick Barnes against Lenore Ryan to glean some coaching knowledge, or was he sitting there to annoy Rick Barnes to the point that Barnes is going to let him put on a uniform and go play?
No, I mean, he is dying to play. I'm sure he is very annoying at this point trying to get back on the floor. But Rick actually told him right before tip-off, he said, come over here, sit next to me and watch this game and kind of see it through my eyes. And he would sit there and he would tell Zakiya, or he would talk to Zakiya, like, this is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? And when they had timeouts, he would bring Zakiya in and say, tell them what you just saw, because I just saw it. Like, they need to hear it from you too. At one point, he told Zakiya to go to the end of the bench and tell one of his teammates why he just got pulled out of the game. So he wanted Zakiya to see an actual game kind of from his seat and see it the way he sees it. And I'm sure part of it is Zakiya probably thinks if I annoy this guy enough, he'll let me play. So I think he's working that in as well.
Plenty of questions we got to today on the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. Can't thank you enough for sending those in. A big thank you, as always, to Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. Free estimate, 865-524-5888. For Brett Hubbs, Grant Ramey, Austin Price, I'm Eric Kane. From all of us here at Volquest, Merry Christmas time here, and let's enjoy the next 2 months.
I'm gonna go buy some fireworks for 4th of July celebration, because it's Independence Day every day, right? And you guys can listen to your Mariah Carey Christmas CD and,
on repeat.
I'll go find me some summertime tunes or whatever.
All right, boys. I gotta go. I got an Easter egg hunt starting.
Appreciate you guys for listening here on the
Happy Valentine's
Volquest.
Day.
Hey, it's St. Patrick's Day for Eric.
It is. Got my green hoodie on. It's the Volquest
I thought
Mailbag
that was
Podcast.
Christmas green.